let's take a look at this equivalent units problem, which is problem 5-43. Seattle Products manufactures computer cases. All material is added at the start of production, and overhead is applied to each product at the rate of 70% of direct labor cost. At the beginning of July, there were no units in finished goods inventory, and the firm's inventory cost records provided the following information. And we have all this information here. How many units were in work in process, what the direct material cost was, what the direct labor cost was, how many units were started, what the costs were incurred in July, and work in process at the end, which were 60% complete with regard to conversion costs. Okay, at the end of July, the cost of finished good was $124,000, and we're asked to compute the equivalent units of production using the weighted average method, and then the unit production cost for material, labor, and overhead, and cost of goods sold, and prepare the journal entries to transfer completed goods to July. All right, now I've got this one appearing down below, and we'll just slide it and we'll work on it. So part A is to compute the equivalent units. So if I can grab this and slide this down, what we'll do is we'll take a look at what the material and labor overhead units were and go from there. So let's take a look and see what part A reveals. Okay, in beginning units we had 100,000 units. Okay, so we take the 100,000 units as to material, labor, and overhead. Now, in most environments I've seen the labor and overhead combined is called as conversion cost, but doing them separately is okay. Then we started and completed 1,000,001. Now the reason we know there was 1,000,001 completed is because we started with 100,000, we entered 1,000,005 into production, and 400,000 were left. So we wound up with 1,000,006 to account for what we started for and what we produced, and if 400,000 were left, then solving for the unknown, 1,000,001 must have been started and completed. All right, let me slide a little bit more. And that gives us our equivalent units of production with respect to material, labor, and overhead cost components. All right, B says what's the unit costs? Let's take a look at that and see if we can explain what we're looking at here. Okay, beginning inventory they told us was 1,115,000. Now how we calculate that is we put the 750,000 from there, we take the 215,000 as direct labor, and they tell us 70% of the direct labor number is the overhead number. And if you multiply 215,000 times 70%, you'll come up with the 150,500 that you see to the left of my mouse. All right, then we need to take a look at what the current costs were. They tell us the costs for July were 5,650,000 in units, but that really is material cost. Direct material costs were 4,105. Now I see what happened. These two numbers need to be moved over to the side, okay? The book they need to be just slid over. So that's material and that's labor, and we drop those in. Again, take 70% of the labor, we can come up with the overhead cost. So then we can total the inventory, or total the costs, and divide by the equivalent of units of production that we calculated above. Let me start to see if I can slide up. Yeah, so that 1,600 comes from there, the 1,440 comes from here. We use the same number for overhead. And we come up with a cost per equivalent unit in total and for each cost category. Sliding back down, number 3 says compute the cost of goods sold. Well, if we had nothing in finished goods and the cost of goods manufactured was 10,920,000, and we get that by taking the cost per unit of goods produced times the 1,000,002 that we completed. Let me slide back up. Okay, I've moved the screen a little bit. They don't really explain the $1,000,002 very well, but if you look up in the information, what you had was you had $1,006,000 started and entered in production and 400,000 ending. So $1,006,000 less 4 gives us $1,002,000 that were completed. Okay, so $1,002,000 times 910 gets us a cost of $10,920,000. Okay, now that's the cost of goods that were available for sale. We have to back off that the finished goods inventory was $124,000 to determine the cost of goods sold. Now the entry to transfer the work in process to finished goods excuse me, relies on the $10,920,000 that we calculated as the cost of goods manufactured, and we debit finished goods and credit work in process. Once we know cost of goods sold, we can make the next entry, which is to debit cost of goods sold for $10,796,000 and credit finished goods inventory. And that's this problem, everyone. Thank you.